What's going on, everyone? Today we're going to be tackling a very big project on the FJ40. So if you followed along all of the videos on this build, I basically mechanically restored the entire thing and I did some cosmetic stuff. So we changed the emblems that were messed up, fixed the grill bezel, painted a couple of things that need to be painted, but for the most part the body is all factory. We did do a one-stage paint correction and ceramic coat, so it's looking sharp, but now we have to address one thing in the interior. I'm going to open up the driver door and show you right now. So as we open up the door, you can see that we are missing a headliner. We've got a beautiful interior. Keep in mind, this only has 53,000 original miles. So the interior is relatively untouched, but we're missing a headliner. So the headliner ended up becoming dislodged from the foam, which happens over time, and it started drooping really bad. My father-in-law ended up just ripping it all off before he towed it over to the house. That was actually well before we were even supposed to purchase this thing. It was just supposed to get it running to sell. But one thing I really wanted to do, and I kind of mentioned it in the first walk-around video of this Land Cruiser, was to get rid of the sunroof because it's aftermarket, and I wanted to fiberglass it and seal it up. But I'm gonna leave it like that. He did the install himself in the early 80s, so I want to leave it in the spirit of how it was changed. It does have aftermarket flares. The other side has a CB antenna mount and the auxiliary fuel tank hole in the quarter panel, so it's not as pure as I would want it to be. But we're talking about a very, very old vehicle, and this is still factory paint. Factory body panels, has never been messed with, so I'm just gonna leave well enough alone and we'll just change the headliner. So I just want to briefly go over what it takes to remove the top. Basically, we're gonna have to take off these two on the front, and then if you look at that little acorn, there is a Phillips head on this side, and you'll have to unglue these pieces, which I just actually installed maybe like 6-7 months ago. So I'll have to unglue them or cut them and get new ones. But if you look on the other side over there, you see those 3 Phillips. There's gonna be 3 on this side as well. You just can't see it with the camera. And it's basically like a clamshell that pops off. Once that clamshell pops off, you'll see the Phillips heads holding the roof down on this side. That's gonna be pretty much the trickiest part. And then these are easy. These are going to be held in on the inside, where you can see right here. So we just gotta grab those. And then in the very, very back, since there's a channel right there, it can't hold it from the bottom up. So those actually have screws that are holding it down. So now that I explained it, we're just gonna go ahead and do it and you'll get a better idea. But all my research was really focused on this because it was kind of hard to figure out. But anyways, let's get to it. So obviously you wanna hold on to your tools very tight, make sure that they don't drop out of your hands. This is where things are going to get a little tricky. I've got to pry this off. Hopefully we can get it to where we can reuse it. If not, it's not a very expensive piece, but they are glued in. All right. It scratched it just a bit, but now we're free. So we can get this off. So that's what they call the acorn nut in the front. I was very confused by what people were talking about, but I'll show you right now. So this is the acorn nut that's by the front of the windshield. So it's actually on this very front part facing the outside. Now we've got 3 Phillips to get out from the inside. Those are on there. Okay, these things are really on there and I don't want to strip it out. So we'll see which one fits best. So definitely go for a Phillips 3. The Phillips 2 has way too much movement. So we're going to use an impact hammer and try to give it just that jarring movement. It needs to break free. Perfect, we got one. Two. Three. All right, let's do the rest with hand tools. Now you're gonna wanna hold this panel right where my hand's at, because it's just like a little clamshell that's covering the other bolts, and you don't wanna drop it. So if you see this lip, it goes in this channel like that. So you're just dropping it out. You can see the, let's see, 4 bolts that are holding this part in on both sides. And again, we're just going to use hand tools. So that's going to be it for this side. Now just do the same for the other side and we'll start moving back. And just in case you didn't fully grasp what we're trying to do on the driver's side, I'm going to try to stay out of the way so you can see what we're doing on the passenger side. We're just trying to break it loose. And this is called an impact screwdriver. If you don't have one, you can order them relatively cheap. Otherwise, if you put too much torque on a Phillips head and you try getting these off, it's going to damage the head. It'll just strip out on you. All right, as I mentioned before, we now have to take off these from the inside. These are all easy to get to. What you can't see in the camera is 3 just right around where the window wraps on the hardtop. It's a sauna in this thing. It's about 90 degrees. The weather is hot, humid, but we got the bolts off the passenger side. Let's flip the camera around and check out the final bolts holding this top on. Now this applies to ambulance doors. I don't know if it applies to the older tops, but we've got the final bolts just hidden in plain sight. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 and 6 all the way down there. So we're going to go ahead and get all of those unbolted, then we could take the top off. All right, that is every bolt removed to get this fiberglass cap off of the top. So far it's been smooth sailing. Let's see if it gives us a hard time taking it off the roof and putting it down on the ground. All right, so lift it. Is it, oh, hold on, put it back. There's a wire up here. Oops. Okay, take two. Lift it.
Right, look
Where?
right in front of your head.
Oh my God, come back. Got it.
You're taking it from me.
Okay, keep going. Okay, lift it. That's it.
Yay!
Got the roof off your Land Cruiser. All right, thank you. And here's the wire that got us tripped up for a second, but it's basically for this dome lamp. And the wire goes into the hardtop, which I'll show you right now. And then it runs all the way across and connects to the frame right here. And that wire actually runs in from the bottom, going up into that, sits on this channel, and then plugs into that fitting right by the window. So on to the next project, removing the sunroof frame and buzzing off all of this foam because we have to prep it nice and clean for the new headliner. Speaking of the new headliner, we have had it laid out in the living room for about 4 days now, trying to get some of the wrinkles out. There's just a few, but hopefully with some heat and some glue, this thing will be nice and flat. All right, we've got the frame off. I'm going to have to figure out how to reseal it when that time comes. But for now, I'm actually going to sand this down and repaint it because it looks a little dated and weathered. But other than that, this thing is ready to do the final cleaning. We're going to peel off the rest of the factory headliner, and then I'm going to use this to clean off the foam. So we've got a green bristle brush. This is what is recommended the most by people online that have done it. It's very coarse, not enough to actually take off any fiberglass, but strong enough to get the foam off and the glue. So we'll buzz right through it and then I'll show you the final result. Man, it is way hot in here. There's no air movement at all, and the mask is making it even worse. But we made some good progress. So I started out with the coarse brush and the gun, but man, that gun was getting way too hot. So I figured I was just going to use the vacuum. I used the head really hard and got as much foam as I could off. Now we're going to start with the brush again and try to get the rest of the top looking like this. You want all the glue and leftover material off so that there's a nice bond to the new headliner. Wow, that was literally hours and hours of work. I only time-lapsed some of it because it took so long, and it was a couple hours over a few nights. But basically, we started with the roll-lock disc right here, the green one. That gun that I was using actually died on me. It was old and the motor went out, so I ordered a new motor. But in the meantime, we had to get this project moving along, so I used the trusty old drill. This time with a 4-inch wire wheel. That was from Home Depot. Some protective glasses and some 80 grit sandpaper. This was used on the very hard to reach places up here where the wire wheel couldn't get, but I wanted to knock some of the glue down because you can tell this orange color, when it's thick, that's all the glue going all the way up. So just a couple of passes with some 80 grit, knocked it back down to the fiberglass, and it's pretty much ready. when I did this header panel right here, this is where the seal rides on, and you're gonna bring the headliner all the way up and tucked to this corner. And basically the wire wheel was just taking off a bunch of paint while taking off the glue and all that extra foam from the old headliner. So I did have this left over from another project. It's the factory color match paint Cygnus white from Cruiser Corpse, and it's really spot on. I mean, I sprayed it maybe with 2 thick coats and it looks great. Obviously no one's going to see it, but I didn't want to leave any raw metal, anything that could rust. So I hit a few spots with rust reformer and 2 coats of the Cygnus white, and now that's going to be all dialed in, at least in my opinion, so we can finally get this headliner laid out. And one final thing to mention that I forgot is you're actually supposed to, or recommended to, lay a nice even bead of caulking all the way through to actually seal this panel to the fiberglass and prevent water from seeping in. Right here you can see that dark area going all the way through. That's where the water was actually seeping in and starting to mess with the fabric. So eventually that'll cause some sagging headliner issues. The manufacturer of the headliner recommended that step, and I chose to use this caulking. This was from Home Depot. I think it's like $4 for this tube. I had extra left over from a home project, so that's why I went with it. But anything of, mold resistant and water resistant qualities will be fine. Obviously we don't want this to happen to the new headliner, so just one more thing to cross off the list. So right there you can see the yellow tape on the whole frame all the way around. That's to prevent any overspray from the glue. Then we laid down the headliner, and you're supposed to make sure that seam is in front of the roll bar. So center everything, start from the center out, laying down the glue, leaving about 8 inches all the way around of the edges. Then I decided to do the side edges. We did the front edge and then the rearward edge, trimming along the way until it was all complete. So now that the headliner was all glued in, it was time to cut out the hole for the sunroof. This was very nerve-wracking to say the least, but we started by cutting and leaving a few inches extra, and then trimming along the way just to get it as close as we could to what we thought was right. So we were fighting with the sunroof install for a bit, but we figured out that it was due to the double thick padding on the foam. We ended up having to trim just a little bit more so that the track could sit in and get all those slide tabs bolted down. That is a wrap on the headliner install. The sunroof was definitely a bit of a headache, but we figured it out. This headliner replacement was spec'd at double thick foam compared to factory. So it was just a little bit harder getting the sunroof back in with the bracketry and whatnot. Again, that's aftermarket, so I did have to work around how they set it up originally. But the headliner install for our first headliner, me and my father-in-law together, I think we did a great job. Overall, I would say it's a 9 out of 10. There's no wrinkles in the major area. Those small wrinkles you see there, that was just from shipping, so those will flatten out. We've got the header panel looking great, and the most wrinkled part is going to be the back corners. There's just way too much material there when you try to glue it and press it in to not have relief cuts. So I don't know why this brand doesn't offer relief cuts where it's actually split in the middle and sewn for a corner, but it is what it is. We've already got it in, and overall I'm happy with it. So this looks way better than it did before, and now it's time to get it put back onto the FJ40. All right, so we're gonna walk it back to those 2 front things. Sit up there. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. More. More. All right. I think that's about right. Yeah. Another one. Thank you. Okay. So I lined up everything as best as I could. It looks like all the bolts are going to land where they need to. Now it's just a matter of putting all the bolts on that we took off in the beginning of the video. So I won't bore you with that. We'll just time lapse it and check out the final product inside. we went from this to this. All right, guys, that wraps up this project. This headliner is complete. I love the way it looks. Much better than that foam and glue that I was looking at the last year or two. But anyways, that is just one more thing checked off the list on this Land Cruiser project. And if you made it this far, like, share, subscribe, comment. They all make a big difference on this growing channel. And I'll catch you on the next one.